charities claims that it's also racist and colonial, and that people of colour are often framed as out of place in those surroundings. Well, joining me now to discuss this important topic is David Bean from the Countryside Alliance and Beth Collier from Wild in the City. Beth, if I could start with you, I mean, what do you make of this report? Is the countryside racist?
There's racism in the countryside, and it has an impact on how safe people of colour feel stepping into it, perhaps for the first time. So organisations like mine exist to help people of colour find a safe, secure environment in which to take those first steps and to enjoy time in the countryside.
Give us some examples then.
It might be attitudes that are shouted, get off my land.
Really?
It could be made to feel that we're out of place, that we're unusual, that we don't fit. It's the way we're looked at and seen as strange or unfamiliar.
So it's attitudes as well?
Yes.
David, what do you make of that, what you've just heard Beth say?
Well, I think it would be as absurd to say that the countryside is free of racism as it would be to say that about any other walk of British or indeed global life. But when I hear reports such as this come out, as they do occasionally, I start to worry that if an organisation spends time and oxygen telling people from ethnic minority backgrounds that if they go to the countryside then they won't be welcomed there, then there is a real risk that they might start to believe it and that it might start to become self-fulfilling in a way.
Beth, do you want to reply to David?
I think that's a perverse way of viewing it, that these reports are grounded in the voices and perspectives and experiences of people of colour.
So it's lived experiences, what you're saying? Okay.
Yes. So then
Tell us about some of those lived experiences then.
There are a lot of people that feel that they don't belong or they don't fit in the countryside, that it's a space and a place for the white middle classes in particular. This is not just the countryside but the environmental sector. And they feel that it's not for them. And often there's a message that becomes internalised. So you'll find people of colour say, you know, we don't swim, we don't hike, we don't camp. It has its roots back in historical messages, going back into colonialism, this idea about who are the best custodians of the countryside and wildlife, and it permeates still today.
Surely then, David, this is a great opportunity then to have proper conversations about how the countryside might be diverse, because Beth is clearly saying she's got lived experience, and she also does, I think we'll get onto that in a moment, she takes young people into the countryside as well. There is a problem here.
Absolutely, and I think that the answer to it, and we probably will come on to speak about this shortly, is much the same as the answer to racism and other forms of prejudice in most walks of life, and that answer is education. It's about giving people the opportunity to experience new environments, and not only to challenge the prejudices of the people who are in them currently, but also perhaps to challenge their own prejudices too.
Sure, and let's talk about the young people then, because, excuse me, you do take young people, don't you? Groups, and is that right? Tell us what you do.
We take people of all ages. We focus more on adults because adults have children, and we want to create a leadership team who are people of colour to inspire other people to feel safe to come into the countryside. So our focus is mainly on adults.
Yeah, I guess,
I
guess that's the thing, isn't it? Because if adults are doing it, then their offspring will then create that habit, I guess, isn't it? And so how much of an impact has that made? What do people say to you?
It's huge. In our countries of heritage, we're often deeply connected to nature and the natural world, but something happens when we come to the West, where there's a huge disparity. We're much less connected and engaged. And our ethnographic research has shown that one of the big factors is the lived experience of racism and hostility, or the fear of it, going into more remote, open settings where there are fewer people of colour. OK, so give us an example of some of the things you would like to see happen. We'd love to see everyone feel that it was a place for them. What can happen is over generations, when you have less contact with nature, you lose a sense of sort of how to dress, how to access nature, being able to name wildlife and to feel that it's familiar to you. So we're bringing back what we call the oral tradition for learning about nature and the natural world, which we would have had in countries of heritage, learning through elders, learning from our grandparents and relatives, which is something we often miss here. And we don't always feel welcome with the environmental organisations who might make us feel we're out of place.
I'm going to put you on the spot now, David. I hope you don't mind. You are affiliated with the Countryside Alliance. Of course, it's a predominantly white image. I mean, as an organisation, are you conscious of making the countryside and your organisation more diverse? Because that's just one example, isn't it?
Well, the Countryside Alliance is a membership organisation with people from all walks of life across the UK who are united in their love of the rural way of life, of the countryside. And I think that one of the best things that we can do to help promote diversity does go back to that piece about education. We have a programme called Fishing for Schools, which focuses on allowing young people from primarily the more deprived urban areas to have the opportunity to experience life in nature in the countryside through the medium of angling. So we take them out there to experience it firsthand. And while we're not focusing explicitly on ethnicity, clearly the profiles of a lot of the areas that we draw kids from, and we work with schools directly, will tend to see relatively high proportions of people from ethnic minority backgrounds. So that is just another way, focusing more explicitly on the younger generation, that we can help promote that diversity.
OK, well, I guess it's going to take time as well, isn't it? Listen, lovely to hear your thoughts. David Bean and Beth Collier, thank you very much. Enjoy the countryside.
Thank you.
One last break tonight, but coming up...